Hello and welcome to Hungary for this special edition of Health. This week we're in the town of Devecser, where the army, groups of volunteer cleanup workers and journalists have descended since a toxic sludge covered this village and others in the region, leaving scores of people burned and badly injured. This week we're looking at the makeup of that red mud. It's caustic on the skin and could provoke cancers if its particles are inhaled. The accident here stems from an alumina factory. Alumina is the basis of aluminium, a metal found in our biscuits, toothpaste and tablets, and yet it's known to be bad for us. We'll be looking at just how bad it may be before travelling to Indonesia, where money needs means that miners are walking a daily path full of sulphur gases, leaving them short of breath. Well, these military men behind me are part of the cleanup efforts, and they take off their masks and protective clothing just while they eat. According to Greenpeace, the levels of arsenic and mercury in the red mud that crashed through this village are very, very high. What's more, experts say that when the mud dries, the fine particles could enter people's lungs, leaving them more vulnerable to developing cancer. From his head to his feet, Joseph Horvat is in pain, caught in the mud that poured out of a waste reservoir from an alumina factory near his home. A week on, he's barely able to stand.
I find it hard to stand up. Now it's hard because of the burns, but I'll try and get up.
No, you'd better not.
I want you to show this around the world so people can see that dangerous substances should not be stored near innocent people.
His feet, his legs, Joseph was up to his neck in the alkaline mud that ate away at his skin. Alkaline, as opposed to acid burns, go deeper into the bone.
Look, the mud was up to my neck. After saving my daughter from it, I went back to get my wife. The mud was coming up as far as her mouth, and I couldn't get to her because she was being brought along by the tide. She was pushed up against the wall. I thought she was going to die. It was reaching her mouth, and she was swallowing it. I was shouting at her to stand up. Stand up. That's the only reason she's alive, is because she did.
Joseph is still in shock, but his doctor says he's strong and will recover with some surgical help.
You saw the gauze wrapped on his feet. That's where he'll need a skin graft. Apart from that, at least internally, he has no problems. His other organs look fine.
The mud that submerged 3 Hungarian villages was high in caustic soda and is suspected of having levels of heavy metals above the norm. Today the tide has stopped, but experts fear that as the mud dries, the fine particles will float in the air and enter people's lungs.
Aluminium, iron, nickel, they can harm the area in your lungs where gases are exchanged, the alveoli. So the dust could damage fibers there. It may take a few years before we know the full consequences.
This toxicologist is worried, especially as the only laboratory tests of the mud that he has to go on are those compiled by the environmental group Greenpeace. Like others, he would like more solid and conclusive tests. Well, we're now in the emergency supply centre set up for the people of Devecser, and having looked at the harmful health impacts an accident at an alumina factory can have, what happens when all goes according to plan? Well, alumina is used in pharmaceutical products, ceramics or aluminium. And aluminium is something we can find in many of our everyday items. It's in tin cans, biscuits and even toothpaste, recognised as detrimental for the brain over a century ago, and yet we all continue to ingest it.
It's found in dozens of everyday products, from tin cans, food packaging, deodorant, toothpaste. Aluminium is in drinking water, even powdered baby milk. The metal is also used in vaccinations, as it boosts the immune system. Yet we've known it's not been good for our health since the 1970s.
We know it's not good for our bodies, yet it's found in food, cosmetics, vaccines. It's got no biological use.
The gut forms a natural barrier against aluminium where it's filtered by the kidneys. But some can still pass into the bloodstream, where the metal then circulates around the body, even the brain.
It takes just an hour for aluminium to get into your body tissues, and it'll remain there for at least 30 days.
Several health studies have shown that aluminium can be toxic, but only in high doses. In some cases, the metal has been linked to diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. But for the vast majority of patient samples tested here, that's not the case.
Our patients don't have a significant amount of the metal in the blood. In all the cases, including the worst, we're far from what we'd consider toxic levels, which could lead to neurological and bone problems.
It's impossible to escape aluminium, as it makes up 1.5% of the Earth's total mass. As a precaution, experts advise using products which contain as little of the metal as possible. This has already opened up a whole new range of aluminium-free products.
Aluminium, then, in many of our everyday items and tablets. Well, we turn now to another substance used to make medicine. It's sulphur. So from the red tide here in Hungary, we go to a turquoise crater in Indonesia. There, miners are walking through suffocating gases for $10 a day.
This is Hartomo's morning walk to work. The 34-year-old leaves his home at around 4 a.m. to climb the mountain, where he's been extracting sulphur for 12 years now. He and around 400 others work in the crater of the volcano. Amid the clouds of pungent sulphur, they break up the molten material before carrying their loads up to the rim of the volcano and a further 3 kilometers down the mountain. The sulphur is then processed here before being used in medicines and also to whiten products like sugar and cosmetics.
The hardest part is the walk up from the crater. I usually carry a load of 80 kilos or more, and sometimes I've walked just 100 or 200 meters when the gases blow in my direction. That's the worst.
Day after day, the miners repeat this work, inhaling sulphur fumes, the nauseating stench of rotten eggs. There have been no medical studies into the effects of this work, but this doctor is concerned about the possible health risks.
From a medical point of view, these sulfur gases can affect the lungs and breathing tract because of the prolonged exposure to these gases over a long period of time. It could cause chronic breathing problems.
It's not pleasant, but Hartomo says he earns more money here than in other work. He normally does 2 trips a day, for which he gets paid less than €8. And until he finds something better, he'll keep on climbing the volcano.
Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Health. It's time for us to leave the vet chair and head back to Paris. A big thanks to the man on the other side of this camera, Johan Baudin. Thanks also to our producer, Young Jim. Have a good week, and I'll see you again next time.